Welcome to the Wizard of Radical Self-Respect. My name is Jared Mello, and I'm the Shepherd of Black Sheep. On this channel here, we talk about radical self-respect concepts. We talk about narcissism, toxic behaviors, toxic relationships. I interview guests on many different kinds of topics between narcissism, dating and relationships, sometimes current events, and sometimes you might get a grab bag episode too. But I have a lot of shorts on the channel. I have a lot of longer form recorded videos, and I also do live streams where people can talk to me, ask questions, etc., where I also break down other people's appearances on other interview shows. And that's what we're going to do here today. Brene Brown, 3 weeks ago, was on the Diary of a CEO. And Brene Brown, for those of you who don't know, her definition of narcissism is a shame-based fear of being ordinary. And I think there could be something to that. I think they definitely have a fear of being ordinary. I don't know if it's shame-based, but in this interview that she does with Stephen from the Diary of a CEO, I actually agree with her on a lot of things here. And it's going to be a majority agreement. However, there are a couple topics that I think that are just really interesting, that I think are going to be polarizing maybe, but I think they're fascinating topics, and I'm so glad they talked about them. But let's jump right in here, or I'll wait for some more people to join the stream here. Ellie, how are you? Yeah, we're going to go over Brene Brown's appearance on Stephen's show. There are a lot of cool stuff they talked about. I actually agree with her about a lot of the things that she's saying. But in the beginning might be really the only thing I might have a slight disagreement with her on. But they talk about a lot of fascinating topics that I think are pretty relevant. And even how Stephen was talking, he is a person that's in the middle. He'll talk to Kamala Harris, and he'll also talk to Jordan Peterson. And he was saying how people don't know what political affiliation he is, and he takes pride because that means he's balanced. And that's something I could relate to. I'm willing to talk to anybody too. Surviving the flu. Oh boy. I'm actually been feeling pretty good today. I didn't get much sleep last night, but for some reason, it's not impacting me very much today, which I'm grateful for. Sleep is very important to me, and I can really be a crankopotamus if I don't get enough sleep. But let's jump into this here. And tell me, Ellie, is this view better or is this view better? Freezing? That might be on your end, Jolly, because it looks like I got good bars here. No heart. Big heart, I should say, not no heart. What a slip. Everyone else, am I freezing on anyone else's end as well? George, what's shaking? George, I appreciate you doing all of those timestamps for some of those videos. But George, big heart, Ellie, is there any freezes here? Nope, I am fluid in time. Fluid in time, we'll say. Jolly, what's shaking? Nobody can see here because I don't want there to be any malfunctions of the stream here. Like, I wonder why that's happening. Should make sure our internet's powered up here, you know? All right, so it's better now. No other choice. I don't like doing the vertical. That's where you get the trolls and it splits the views. I'd rather just have everyone be here under the comment section. I think that's best. But no more freezing. Freezing's no more. I have to like turn off and on the router. Yes, big heart. Not no heart. Well, because the big heart, no BS, right? That's what that is. Good. So we're all here. So let's see what Brene Brown has to say here. There's this. Better one or two. I feel like when we watch interviews, it's better for you all to have the bigger picture of the interview. And then maybe if I like, when I'm talking about it, I can go to this screen here. Okay, no freezing. That's why I wanted to make sure. Because you never know, right? You never know if it's someone who's watching me, it's on their end, or is it on my end? Because if it's on my end, I got to do something about it. So this is what I'll do. When I'm listening to them, we'll have this mode. But then when I'm not listening to them, maybe we can go to this. Right, let's see.
My first question is, how has your perspective on how has the world changed in those last 2 decades in your view?
Jungians would say before any great progression, there is a regression. And I think that when you look at various I know you have a very global audience. When you look at administrations, political administrations across the world, and you look at how power is being used right now, it will tell you a lot about what they're afraid of.
Mm.
But what is that face? We're going to have to pause.
I was thinking about a conversation I had recently with my best friends. It must have been this weekend. Yeah, it was this weekend because it was my friend's birthday in Manchester, the UK. So we flew in. And we had a conversation about how the leading political narrative at the moment, this might be adjacent to what you were saying, but it's the way I interpreted it. The leading political narrative at the moment that seems to be getting people elected is if you say those people with that skin color are the reason for the pain and anguish in your life, it's actually the people below you that are coming over the border or crossing the English Channel on dinghies that are ruining your life. And it seems to be like a really effective narrative to earn power, both in the US and the UK. Like the central narrative that is swaying elections, it seems at the moment in the UK and the US, is those brown people on that boat or coming over the border are the reason for the pain in your life. And it seems to work. And that seems to be the thing getting power. So that's kind of what ran through my head when I had this idea of like power and what you're scared of. I actually think I inverted it to, if I can tell you what to be scared of or find the thing you might be scared of or whatever, then I get power. But maybe it goes the other way too.
I don't think we'll ever talk about anything more important than this, to be honest with you. That's why I thought your response was so interesting, because you may, if I was going to like do the text box above your face, it would have said, well, holy shit, that's interesting. Because when you use power, especially power over, because there's multiple kinds of power. There's power with and to, and power within. So people that use power with and to and power within work from a belief system that's completely different.
And before she goes on, what do you all think? Does power come from fear? Is it driven by fear? Or are there other motives for power? Let us know in the chat here.
We believe that power is infinite and can grow when shared. People who use power over work from a belief system that power is finite, like pizza. And if I give you any, I have a deficit. So it's got to be hoarded and protected and not shared. Power over is...
So basically that version is a poverty mentality version, where they don't think there's enough to go around. If they don't hoard and greedily protect what they have, there's not going to be enough for them. That's what they call poverty mentality in the self-help space. And sure, I think, here's the thing. Sometimes it's accurate though, too. Like it's not always a poverty mentality. Sometimes it's accurate. An example, if the pie that people are paying from a business doesn't get larger and more people are joining that pool, this happens on Facebook, for example. If they have a finite amount of money they're willing to pay out, and then more people join the pool to be getting paid out that money, well, now there is going to be less for each individual person, unless they make the pie they're paying from bigger. If they don't do that, then it is true that when people are also getting paid, there's going to be less for you. That's just true. Now, it's not necessarily what she's talking about, but I'm just giving a counter example.
Really important to understand, because when people are using power over, they're definitely letting you know what they're afraid of, because that's what they're focused on. And they're tapping into, and I think this is absolutely true. If you give people someone to dislike and blame for their pain, and they look different than the people who are voting, you will win 100 times out of 100. If you say, I see your pain, I can tell you exactly the source of it, and I can fix this for you.
Mm-hmm.
They say no one makes better friends than when you have a mutual hatred of a third person. And that might sound negative, but you see this play out all the time. You see this play out in politics. They talk about the other. Republicans will complain about Democrats. Democrats will complain about Republicans. And they kind of join hands in, as a group, disliking another group. Even to an extent, this happens in the narcissism space, right? We're all in here, and we talk a lot about narcissists and their toxic behaviors. That's like the mutual calling out of another group. In the gendered wars, women will call out men, men will call out women. So you see this dynamic all of the time. It's absolutely a thing.
And the source of it is going to be easy to see. You're not going to see yourself in them.
Mm.
So that narrative that you were talking about, it is a full circle. People in power use power to address issues that they're afraid of. They gain power by leveraging fear and giving people an enemy. That's how.
I mean, I think sometimes that's definitely sometimes true. They're using the fear as leverage. There are certainly times where that happens. I think other times it can just be though people want power for their own selfish reasons. They want it because, like, as a narcissist would want it, they like feeling powerful and superior. And the more powerful they get, the more people that are going to confirm their powerfulness. They're going to confirm their superiority. So I think that's another version of it. Now, is that always driven by fear? I don't think always, but I think sometimes it can be for sure. But like she said, this dynamic plays out all of the time. You see this.
How this works. It works like this. I mean, I spend 95% of my time in organizations working with C-suite leaders and senior leaders. This is how it works in organizations, how it works in political, how it works in faith communities. This is how power works in general. So power over is a very specific kind of power, and it's especially dangerous because in order to maintain it, you have to engage in periodic bouts of cruelty towards vulnerable populations. You have to remind people what you're capable of.
So there's 4 types of power you speak about in
Damn, you have that in your notes?
in Strong Ground, yes. Why are you surprised?
I don't know.
So I'll read you all the definition of power from ChatGPT. This will be interesting. Power is the ability to influence, direct, or control people, situations, or outcomes. There is social interpersonal power. ChatGPT tells me it's my wheelhouse, Jared. Power is the capacity to affect someone's behavior, emotions, or decisions, even when they resist. It's the leverage one person has over another. Psychological power, a sense of internal capability, confidence, and agency. Feeling like you can't act, decide, and create outcomes in your life. Feeling like you can act, decide, and create outcomes in your life. Political societal power, the authority to make rules, distribute resources, and enforce decisions. Physical power, strength, force, or the ability to exert energy. Scientific definition, physics, power equals the rate at which work is done or energy is transferred, usually measured in watts. That's power. And I think there's many versions of power, right? A lot of people think about physical power or just power in a political sense. But I think there's versions. There's different versions of power. How much confidence you have in yourself, the belief you have in your own perception of reality. That's a version of power. Who is more sure of themselves? That's a version of power. Money, how much money you have. That's a version of power. There's all sorts of things. And Danielle says, narcissists and empaths handle the power in different ways. Narcissists drive themselves into the ground, whereas empaths aim to thrive despite what the narcissist does to them. Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. Jared, a psychopathological mind would see power different than a neurotypical human for sure. I think, yes, someone with a pathological personality, what they're going to do is they're going to use power as a tool that's more like a weapon. They're going to use it as a weapon. But I think that's also a good analogy for it. Power is a tool. Tools can be used for good or not so good, depending on the user.
There's 4 types of power in leadership you speak about. There's the power over, which is controlling or exploiting others, power with, finding common ground and building collective strength, power to, which is giving others agency and recognizing their potential, and power within, which is honoring differences and self-worth. So as a leader of a business, if I want to be successful, are you telling me that I need to stay away from power over and adopt another power within this list of 4?
Yeah, I think what we've seen be very successful over time is power with, power to, and power within. So collaborative power, co-creation power, self-awareness, metacognition, knowing yourself, knowing how you think and learn. So power with and power to. Power over is excruciatingly difficult to maintain.
And that's the version that narcissists like, right? They're controlling and they're exploiting others. Power within collective strength, well, on the political side of the spectrum, I think the collective side is more the Democrat side. So they would try to use it that way. Now, granted, there's certainly narcissists on the Democrat side of things as well. Power to recognizing others, power within. So the confidence and how sure of ourselves, that's the power within, I would say.
We're not neurobiologically hardwired to stay in fear for very long. So if I work for you and you're using power over to lead me, you're threatening me with my job, you're threatening me with consequences, you're threatening me with demotion. One of 2 things is going to happen for me neurobiologically. I am either going to just become numb to it. It's not going to be able, you're not going to maintain, I can't maintain that constant level of fear. It's just too demanding, just physically demanding. Or I might get hyper normalized. I might just like, this is what I work in. This is like crazy. This is it, but every now and then you're going to have to do something that demonstrates to me how chaotic and cruel you can actually be. Like you're going to have to engage in periodic acts of cruelty to remind me that the fear is real and to put me back in it.
So that's an interesting way to put it there too. I think narcissists and antisocial types, they probably do that. I think they might do it sometimes very intentionally for that reason. But I think other times they might do it because they enjoy putting other people down. They also don't like seeing other people happy. They don't like seeing other people be joyful, because if they're miserable themselves, they don't like seeing people happy. They get envious of their happiness and their success. So what do? They try to tear that person down. They try to tear them down and to try to make them miserable. So that's a way of exerting power over them in a way to try to tear them down, to get them back to their level. Because if someone's happy, if someone's successful, that is a threat to a narcissistic person's power and control over that person, without a doubt.
And so one of the things you're seeing right now, I mean, like in the US, the deportation and immigration issues. This is not a president that has, tightened his belt on immigration more than other previous presidents. But we've never seen masked people grabbing people off the street while children hold onto their legs screaming, "Mom, mom, mom." We've never seen that before, right? But we've had other presidents probably exceed the deportation numbers that we're seeing. But we've never seen that level of cruelty and display. That is.
So what she's saying there is they called Obama the deporter in chief. He deported the most amount of people. Piers Morgan always says that too. Obama's the deporter in chief. That's true. You wouldn't realize that, right? By the way, a lot of people talk, but that's true. A lot of the cages you saw at the southern border, those pictures were taken during the Obama administration. People don't want you to know that, but that's also true. Now, what she's talking about here with the ICE agents masked, that's of course under Trump. And I mean, to me, like, I don't have a problem with the immigrants that are here that are contributing to society, whether they're landscapers, working in kitchens, doing cleaning stuff, working in the fields. Like, those people aren't hurting anyone to me. I don't have a problem with them. And I think they are using some pretty icky tactics, like tearing people away from each other. And you could argue, yes, like, there needs to be some crackdown on the rules. Absolutely. You have to have a coherent immigration policy. Absolutely. But do you need to be like as cruel about it as they seem to be sometimes? I don't think so. I think that's a little much. Now, of course, there's no argument getting rid of the people that are criminals, that are harming society. Yeah, there's no reason to not want to get rid of people like that. You just want to make sure you're not like getting rid of people that are legally here, or people that like have a right to be here. You don't want that to be happening. And so it's become a little bit of a mess. The whole situation's a mess. Part of the reason why it's a mess is because people didn't address it for so long. I mean, Democrats were saying, if you want to address this, you're racist. But that's just not true. Like, and you know who hates the illegal immigrants the most? And I know this from my political polling job. The people who hate it the most are the legal immigrants that came from Eastern Europe, Asia, even South America. Those are the people that really dislike it the most, because they had to go through the entire process and they did it the right way. And then they see people coming here the wrong way and they get upset about that. And honestly, rightfully so. They have a point about that. And I think what also doesn't help is it takes so long to come here the right way as well. So that incentivizes people to come here illegally. But me personally, I just don't think ICE should be wearing masks. I think that's a little ridiculous. And I don't have a problem with the people here that are working and contributing. But again, there has to be a line in the sand somewhere. I'm not saying I know where that line is, but I think some of it, they've gone a little too far.
A real display of cruelty as a reminder of who holds power and who does not.
It also makes me think of relationships when you're talking about, you know, how people are controlled with power over. A lot of people talk about like sort of narcissistic relationships or abusive relationships where they don't feel like they can leave, or, you know, they don't leave and they end up becoming acclimatized to the treatment.
I'm a big systems theory thing. I'm a systems theory person. I think in systems theory. I was trained in systems theory. I think if you don't understand systems theory, at least if you're leading an organization right now, you're going to fall behind, because the complexity inside and outside of organizations is such that we need a framework to understand how all of these individual systems are bumping up against each other. Like you probably bump up against 100 systems a day, right?
Yeah.
And so what I would imagine, the story I would make up about your success, because this is true of any systems theory, is in order for systems to thrive and grow, they have to keep permeable boundaries, meaning they have to allow feedback to flow in and out from other systems to be aware. So I'm just going to give you a very good example. I'm very excited about the experts you had on around menopause, women's life. I mean, I'm so excited about that. Like, just to be honest with you, like Mary Claire is my doctor.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Dr. Haver. So, what is interesting is the systems that just that podcast bumps up against, you know, and the systems that would be sending feedback that, hey, this is not for me. I'm not clicking on this. I've shared that first one with 100 people, you know, because there's a reality to our lives that is uncomfortable for people. But those are your partners and your moms and your, you know, and your bosses, and it's real. And I can guarantee if this was happening with two dudes, like it'd be a bajillion dollar, whatever, over a trillion, gajillion, I don't know. But just thinking about that one podcast and the systems that you're touching, health, women's issues, family systems are affected. Like that podcast hits 20 systems that I can think of in my head right now.
Mm-hmm.
The divorce rates of women in their 50s and 60s.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, right? Yes or no?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Right. So a healthy system has permeable boundaries, meaning feedback is flowing in and out all the time. What happens when the world gets complex is we start not wanting the feedback. The complexity is too big. So we start shutting down those permeable boundaries. Well, what happens to a system where the boundaries are no longer permeable? It atrophies. And in the process of atrophying, the system becomes self-referencing. Are we good? We're great. Are we right? We're right. Are we on target? We're on target. Because the boundaries of the system are no longer craving outside feedback, even when it's tough. And in businesses today, the geopolitical realities, the market changes, AI, I mean, it's crazy.
Mm.
And so our predisposition to shut down uncertainty and complexity is the biggest threat to the systems in which we work and live. The self-protect, close the wall, put up the drawbridge, fill the moat with piranhas. We just don't have that luxury. We've got to keep the boundaries permeable. We've got to keep learning, guessing, unlearning, relearning.
One of the added complexities is the rise in algorithms. And actually, when I think about algorithms that are powered by AI, they're going to be even better at knowing what you want to see so that you spend time, so that you consume more adverts, which means probably the best thing to show me is either something really fearful or just to confirm what I already believe.
100%.
An algorithm that was doing the opposite probably wouldn't be an enjoyable experience for the average human brain. It would cause too much dissonance, too much discomfort.
But great for democracy.
Great, yeah, fantastic. But terrible for running a business and selling ads. So any company that takes that approach will go bankrupt. This is why TikTok, I think, have been so successful.
And that's a very good point there by Stephen. That's exactly the dilemma. Dr. Simon and I went over this. You can do what is good for business, and that is definitely not always what is good for the world, good for other people. I mean, look no further than the political podcasts out there or the debate bros out there. They polarize very purposefully. They demonize an out group very purposely. Why? Because it's good for business. Nuance, not good for business. Nuance, though, very good for democracy. So where is the balance? Richard Nixon said, the only way you can have successful capitalism is if you have morals, values. And I think the founding fathers said that too. But it's absolutely true. The less morals and values you have, the more predatory and exploitative the system is going to be. Now, there's going to be an element of exploitation in capitalism anyway, but the buffer is those morals, principles, and values. If you don't have that, now it's just going to be a monstrosity. And I think you see that to an extent now. The system's a monstrosity. And these algorithms are so powerful, it is out of control. And I don't think people realize how powerful they are. I realize it because of what I do. I post on all these platforms. I see the power they have. And I think this power is only going to get bigger. And it decides who sees what. It decides what information gets out there. It decides what you even see. And that's why it's important as the consumers out there, the people on social media, etc., to take the step back and realize, there might be information that I'm not getting. I might be getting lies of omission. I might be getting told half-truths. And additionally, sometimes try to see the whole picture, or we're not going to get the whole picture. And if we're not getting the whole picture, we're being manipulated.
Is the algorithm is, I don't use TikTok. So I have a TikTok account. I don't have the app on my phone. But from what I hear is it's so unbelievably addictive. People describe it to me and they're like, oh my God, it's so addictive.
But this shit is the devil.
Yeah. Yeah. But people are driven by incentives, right? And your share price is going to tumble and you're going to be fired. You're going to lose your status and your power.
And let's see what Brene Brown says about this, because Stephen's correct here. This is what will happen. So what is Brene Brown's answer?
You don't do that. I'm playing devil's advocate. Obviously, I'm not.
No, I agree. What do you think the solution is?
So she turned back to him. But let's see what Stephen says.
And what responsibility do the bros who run these tech platforms have?
It's complicated.
Well, I agree. I'm not looking for an easy answer. Go ahead. Hit me.
Well, and I just think it's complicated because what an objective party would say, who's just looking at the incentives of these groups of people, is if they don't do it,
Someone will.
China will. So even with AI now, you know what I mean? I'm like, I've sat with all these experts and I keep hitting up against this wall, which is, okay, if we just banned people in the United States from pursuing this super intelligent strategy, then Russia and China get there first, then the United States, unfortunately, are going to end up being China's French bulldog. And actually, I can't refute that. I go, no, you're right. Because you'd have to literally lease the technology off them. It will be so powerful and give such an economic advantage that you'll have to lease it off China. So I go, okay, I guess Sam Altman does need to crack on, or else.
And so what do you do about that? He's right. This is exactly what happens. There's an AI arms race, just like there was a nuclear bomb arms race. And whoever gets them has power. In America, for example, I think we take it for granted, the level of power that we have implicitly being in the United States. But other countries, I assure you, they do not take it for granted because they don't have the same level of power that America has. They see the dynamic in action. And it would not be too good if China and Russia took control of this stuff. In India, no. Like that would not be good for anybody. So what do? You're kind of just forced to let them do what they do. And hopefully they do it responsibly. And hopefully it doesn't go off the rails. But I do think there's a pretty good chance AI will go off the rails at a point. It's just a matter of when.
It's complicated.
I mean, this is where I end up every time.
I mean, look what happened with TikTok. China made an algorithm. It was unbelievably addictive. The United States have just had to buy it off them because they were scared that the data was going to be used against the United States. A prime example, like China were like, fuck it, we don't care.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And they made an unbelievable algorithm called TikTok, which just captivate, the youth are all just like losing their brains. So I don't know. It's tough. It's rough. Spiritual crisis.
Yeah, I mean, you just laid it out. We're emotionally dysregulated. We're distrustful of each other. We don't trust ourselves very much. And we're disconnected. I can't give up on people, though. I'm not built that way. Like, I just believe that we are more good than greedy. I was in conversation.
I don't know if that's true. I mean, it's a nice thought, but are we truly more good than greedy? Some people. I think some people are. I think some people really do try to do good. And the weird part about that is sometimes they get a lot of pleasure from being the person who is more selfless. So it's kind of in a roundabout way, a way to be selfish, but it's still good what they're doing. But there's also certainly a lot of people that are really into the greed element too. And usually they're the people that are at the top of industry. They're the ones doing the best. So that's also a thing.
When Trevor Noah at an event. And I mentioned this term that I was really excited about, and he challenged me on it. And I said, I think what we need is cognitive sovereignty. We need to wrestle control away from the algorithms and decide what we consume, what we read, how we think critically. We need to think about our attention and our focus as commodities that people are after because they're after them, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a very good point by Brene there. Our attention is extremely valuable. Our focus is extremely valuable. And where we put it absolutely matters. This is a big tenet of radical self-respect, in my opinion. Be mindful of who, what, and where gets your attention, because the kinds of content you listen to, the books you read, the algorithms you stroll, that is absolutely influencing you. Neuroplasticity is in action. whether you think it is or not, whether you actively know it or passively, or it's just happening. It is happening though. So we have to be mindful of this. And what she's saying here, this is an important point. How do we wrestle the power away from the algorithms? Well, one way is less social media, I guess, right? The other is actively trying to avoid the things that are maybe not good for us. That's another way. Blocking some accounts that drag us down. That's another way. But to an extent, as long as we're on these platforms, the algorithm is going to be a thing.
Mm-hmm.
He had an interesting point, though. He always has interesting points, don't you think?
It's so tough to talk to Trevor because he's always got an interesting point.
He's always got an interesting point. Damn it. And he's funny. But he said, no, we need less cognitive sovereignty, Brene. And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, everything's about the For You page. Everything's for you. We need communal sovereignty. He's like, the whole problem is that your For You page is completely sovereign. You intellectually and spiritually, I'm paraphrasing what he said. I'm sure it was like funnier and better looking, but and then I was trying to think about, like, I guess maybe that's not the right term, but let me tell you what scares me the most. I'm in some weird rooms because of the nature of my job. I'm in rooms where the people who run these platforms that own the CEOs of these business and the founders are in these rooms, and I hear them talking, and I hear things that are so misaligned that it panics me. So I hear someone say, hey, tech billionaire, what should my kids study? I'm worried for my kids. Wow, they should study coding, physics, and then 5 minutes later, as if that answer didn't happen, someone will say, to what do you attribute your success? I mean, deeply when you think about it. And the same person will say, my deep reading of philosophy and the Stoics. And so then I'm thinking to myself, well, which is it, dude? And then I start to extrapolate from there and wonder if there is a thinking class that's emerging where they're like, we're going to read philosophy and we're going to read the liberal arts and we're going to study history. And the rest of you just keep scrolling. Don't worry about the big words. We'll handle all the big words for you. Like, it's like when they asked Steve Jobs,
and that would be a dangerous thing if there becomes a thinking class. And there, to an extent, this has already happened, right? There's people that are more intellectuals, and then there's the people that are doing the meat and potatoes work, like the people who are necessary, the people who are doing things like working in the convenience stores, working on the farms. Like, there's a certain skill that is needed for that. There's a certain level of intelligence. But generally speaking, it's not those people that are also then thinking about the world's biggest problems and trying to solve them. So I get what she's saying. There is certainly sort of a thinking class, a philosopher's class almost, as you could say.
Kids must love the iPad. Steve Jobs said, my kids don't have an iPad. And then his biographer, who spent time with his family, said he wasn't kidding. There's no technology. At dinner, they're talking about art and history. The hardest chapter I've ever written in my life of any book was the chapter on grounded competence and strong ground. What is the set of skill sets and mindsets that I think we're going to need to future ready and future proof ourselves to be leaders moving forward? And I think what was hard about it was the complexity of, it was probably a combination of 30 different mindsets and skill sets. And when I was done, for commercial reasons, someone on my team immediately said, geez, this is like if you can train people in these things, this is like really important. And the first thing I thought was, fuck that, my kids. Train schmain. Yeah, I get it. It's important. Like we'll develop some instrumentation, measure it. We'll train folks in it. I think it's trainable. It's teachable. It's measurable. But really, I want this for my kids. I want my kids to know systems thinking. I want my kids to know anticipatory thinking, situational awareness, temporal awareness. I want my kids to have this complex set of skills. Do I want them to have jobs one day where all they're worried about is shareholder value? Really, no. I want them to own their mind own their intellect, own their attention, and own their focus.
Amen to that, Brene Brown. I think those are great goals for your kids.
I want them to read. I want them to understand history. I want them to develop pattern recognition skills, because these are the skills of the future. I want them to be able to hold the tension of nuance and paradox when everything in their brain is saying, pick one, reconcile, I'm uncomfortable. Pick one, reconcile, I'm uncomfortable. That's neurobiology.
In those 20 years of your 20 plus years of your career, what have you been exposed to from a 30,000 foot perspective? Like what are the wide range of reference points that you draw upon to be the person that you are today? And, because it feels like you've got a very wide range of references. Clearly, you're someone that cares a lot about history. That comes through in your answers. But I'm wondering in your career, like what are the experiences that you've had? Have you been working directly with patients? Is it academic reference points you're drawing upon?
Yeah. No one's ever asked me this, which I've been grateful that no one's asked me. So what a pain in the ass. But because no one's going to like the answer.
I'm excited about the answer now.
Everything. Like every single thing. Yes, I love history. Yes, I read academic papers all the time. Yes, I wake up in the morning and I read, because of the nature of my work, I read the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, Bloomberg, the Financial Times. I read a lot. But there's a chapter in the book that was one of my favorite to write on the transitions home from work, mm-hmm. and how tough they are. And how, if you're like me, you've had a very frustrated partner look at you more than once in your life and say, hey, I know it was stressful. I don't work for you. Change gears.
Yeah.
Have you ever had that?
No comment.
No comment? Yeah. I use a metaphor in that book, in this chapter, of a lock. And how did that come to me? Because I was reading the book series, The Rivers of London. And in that book series, there are two gods of the Thames, and the Teddington Lock.
One of the things that is throughout your work is this idea of connection. I did a mushroom. I did magic mushrooms with my girlfriend a couple of years ago. First time I've ever done it. And the message that came through for me was about connection. And that word has had a fond place in my heart ever since as being really, really important. And we live in a society that's more lonely than ever before, more disconnected in many ways, as you described when you're referencing the spiritual crisis that we're living in. This word connection, what does that mean? Does it mean...
So what I think connection means is how emotionally safe you can be with the people around you, whether it's your family, your friends, romantic partner, but the emotional safety, openness, honesty, and having the courage to be who you truly are. I prefer to call it the courage to be who you are, as opposed to the vulnerability to be who you are. I don't know. The phrasing vulnerability is not my favorite, but you could also say it's vulnerability as well. But what is your definition of connection out there? That's my definition of connection.
On an individual basis, does it mean me having friends and relationships? Is that connection? Is that the type of connection I should be looking for? Or do you think people need to ladder up further to their city, their town, their world, to the community, to something bigger? God. What does connection mean in this context?
Yes. I think the answer to that question is yes. We're neurobiologically hardwired to be in connection with other people. And in the absence of connection, there's always suffering. Always suffering in the absence of connection. So I think...
And I think that's a good point by Brene. There is suffering in the lack of connection. Now, that doesn't mean I don't think everyone's going to be connected to one another. But if you have no connection and you're disconnected in particular with the people you're close to and the people you're surrounded with most, that's absolutely going to be a thing. And the definition of spiritual, Ellie, spiritual refers to anything connected to the inner life, meaning, purpose, consciousness, or a sense of connection to something larger than the physical world. It's a good definition.
I mean, just how we're built, mirror neurons, our ability to sync up neurobiologically when we feel connected and are hearing each other. So to me, connection is the ability to be in a relationship where we can both give and receive, where we feel seen, heard, believed, valued. That human connection is really important on a micro level, one-on-one with other human beings. I think a sense of belonging and a sense of place. And I don't know that necessarily needs to be a location, but a sense of being a part of something bigger than you, I think is also important. So love and belonging, connection, irreducible needs. I think spirituality, I define spirituality as being inextricably connected to other people by something bigger than us. Maybe that's love. Maybe that's God. Maybe that's fishing.
It's a good definition by Brene.
Like it's different for other people. For me, faith is one of my values, and I'm a pretty serious God person. I'm a pretty deep person of faith. I guess I would ask somebody, what is that thing that transcends difference, political difference, ideological difference, race, gender, belief systems, class? What is it that brings you to a common humanity place?
So what's your answer to that out there? What is the thing that transcends politics and all of those things? I know my answer. What transcends it? Music and art. Those two things are supposed to transcend that stuff. To a lesser extent, I think sports can too. Although within sports, there can certainly be some division. Absolutely. People get very competitive. But ultimately, for the people listening or watching art, music, art, and art includes films, art includes TV shows, art includes paintings. Those are the things that are supposed to transcend the nonsense. And that's one of the biggest reasons I have a problem with propaganda. And say what you want about Dr. Peterson, but back in the day, I think he said some pretty good stuff. And one of the things that he said about propaganda was, propaganda is when you make a movie, you make a show with the outcome in mind. You know where the story's going. You want it to specifically be a certain message. And so you see this a lot in maybe woke stuff, right? When they push this narrative, they want you to think a certain way. They're trying to influence and manipulate you. But he had said true art doesn't really know its outcome. It's a process. It's a process, and you just kind of roll with it. So when you think of that definition of art versus propaganda, you can really see the difference there. One, outcome in mind. They intentionally want you to think or feel something. Art, on the other hand, is a much more explorative process. You don't really know, you're uncertain, but it just kind of happens. Stephen King calls it, when you have a story to tell, you are releasing excrement. That's what he says. And I would say to that, you know what? That sounds pretty accurate. And I know exactly what he means when he says that. Like, it's a story that you have to shed it from you and share it to the world. So to me, that's a good definition between propaganda versus art. And that's how important music and art is. And that's why it's so bad to me when the propaganda infiltrates it, because it's ruining that sense of connection that people are supposed to have. People are supposed to have certain things that can transcend our disagreements. But if the things that are supposed to transcend our disagreements are infiltrated by propaganda nonsense, now that's going to get in the way of that process, if you ask me. And what do you get? More disconnection.
Like, for me, it's God. It's a big challenge. Because like I try to work from an ethos where I try to find God in the face of everybody that I meet. Even if I want to punch you in the throat, I try to like that's my thing. In some way, I'm connected to you, whether I like it or not, and whether I like you or not.
What do you think about her answer? God. I mean, hey, if it works for people, great. The problem with that answer for everybody is there's going to be a lot of people that are atheists that are going to say, I don't believe in that nonsense. I don't believe in a cloud daddy is what they'll say. But I'm an omnist. I'm somebody that thinks there's truth in all of their religions, but they all lose me when they all say this is the only right way. I think there's some wisdom in all of the religions. And if we're open-minded about it, we can learn a lot about those things and about life from those religions. And as Dan Carlin says, wisdom requires a flexible mind. It's one of my favorite expressions.
And when you talk about belonging, it's interesting. In your book, Braving the Wilderness, which I think the question is kind of summed up by the subtitle here, the quest for true belonging and the courage to stand alone. This appears to be a dichotomy or a contradiction.
Mm-hmm.
To belong, but also to stand alone.
Mm-hmm.
Why are both of these important? Why is it important to belong? What does that mean? And why is it also important to stand alone?
Because I don't think you can truly belong to anything or any group if you don't belong to yourself first. True belonging requires us to be who we are, not to change who we are. That's fitting in. Fitting in is the greatest threat to belonging.
Interesting. That's a great way to put it. Fitting in is the biggest threat to belonging, because fitting in is when you try to bend, twist, and contort yourself to get other people to like you, as opposed to just owning who you are and letting the cards fall as they may. I like it.
Which takes us both back to our childhoods, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Fit in, fit in, fit in, fit in. The problem is that chameleon kind of skill set means that in order to fit in, the first person you betray is yourself. We've got to be able to stand alone.
That's a good one. In order to fit in, the first person you have to betray is yourself. I agree with that.
And that's what's happening right now in the world. I mean, if I look back at Braving the Wilderness, that was maybe the only prophetic book that I think I've ever written. Like that, I don't think I'm prophet-like, but man, did I call what was happening in terms of the big sort into ideological bunkers, where we're going to get to a place where I don't even know you, but I'm going to call you friend because we hate the same people. And you over there, I actually do love you. You're a family member of mine. But I'm not, because we don't believe in the same things, you have no meaning in my life. Like, it's like we have gotten to the place where ideological bunkers, and those are so dangerous, because here you and I, like, let's say that we have the same belief around immigration. So we're going to flip this table over and we're going to get behind it in our ideological bunker. And we're going to be like, yeah, we're right. And these guys are fucking crazy. Fuck y'all, and then
And here's the thing, though, to Brene. This has always been the case. Humans have always been this way. Now, in terms of family, I mean, if someone disagrees with you politically, it's going to be a little bit of a buffer, because it usually means that your values are just not aligned. But does that mean you still can't be connected to them in some way? No, it doesn't mean that. But another big aspect of it is there's a lot of people that they just don't do well when someone doesn't politically align with them. And how they disagree instantly becomes combative, antagonistic, condescending. And those things are the opposite of connection and emotional safety. So provided somebody can disagree in a emotionally healthy way without losing the connection, it shouldn't be an issue. But as we know, there's all sorts of people that are emotionally immature, narcissistic. They just can't really handle it. They can't handle it without flying off the rails, attacking people personally, using ad hominems. And that's why it matters that there's so many people that are narcissistic. That's why it matters that there's so many people that are emotionally immature. Because when we have a culture of narcissism, an epidemic of narcissism, all those things play a part. They play a part and they hurt our connection with one another. And what we would need is the antidote to narcissism. Christian John would say the antidote to narcissism is authenticity and vulnerability, to which I would agree. I would also add emotional safety to that list as well. And I guess authenticity is also honesty too. But you see how they clash. If a culture is narcissistic, that is going to be at ends with connection. So how do you square those things? Well, as with everything, there needs to be some middle ground. There has to be some middle ground in there. And that's the other problem with narcissistic cultures. It's much more black and white. All or nothing. You're with me or you're against me. Shades of gray, we don't like that. Nuance, we don't like that. And I'm someone, I can see most everyone's points. And what ends up happening is both sides get angry at me, regardless of the topic, whether it's men versus women. There was a guy fighting me yesterday, and I'll say this to you all. There was a guy yesterday giving me all sorts of grief because I called out Andrew Wilson in that debate because he had a tantrum that the woman told the truth about him. And the guy was like, oh, I agree with you about Andrew, but that woman was using narcissistic tactics in the bigger context, and we should be discussing that too, because society's too hard on men. And I'm like, what's your point here? Do you want me to call out this woman too for making bad faith arguments in your opinion? It's like, this isn't the time for that. But he was doing the, what about women? What about women? Even though he was claiming he wasn't saying that. And the process was just very frustrating. It went round and round, and I was breaking my own rules. Once I realized he was being that way, I should have just disengaged. But I was trying to get to the bottom of it, because that's one of the things I try to do. I try to get to the bottom of things, and I can be competitive sometimes too, but it just wasn't going anywhere. It wasn't going anywhere. It was going round and round and round. He agreed with me about Andrew, but he's like, there's a problem here. In the context, the woman lost the debate. I'm like, it doesn't matter. I don't care if she lost the debate. I'm calling out this one thing. That's it. But he didn't think it was enough. He thinks, oh, people are piling on Andrew, and this is part of the problem with society. They're too hard on men. They overlook narcissism in women. It's like, I overlook narcissism in women? The person who calls out Sadia Khan all the time? Me? I'm the one? It's like, come on, man. Like, who do you think you're talking to? But that was a tangent.
One day I'm going to turn to you and say, one thing I'm wondering about is how are we going to solve the problem with the folks coming over in the dinghies from France? Because I don't think we're going to be able to go without solving it, because we do have an employment issue and a housing crisis. And then you go, you're out. My care for you, my connection with you, completely dependent on you not questioning anything we agreed to back here. Well, that's counterfeit connection. What's real connection? Like, I got to know what's going on in your mind, because your face is like, we got to play poker. We're going to have to put that on our agenda. What are you thinking?
I was just thinking about being a podcaster, and I sit here with all types of people. So I had Kamala Harris sat here 3-4 days ago, and I'll have someone on the right sat here.
Yeah.
And then we had Michelle Obama, then I'll have Jordan Peterson, then I'll have the opposite of whatever Jordan Peterson is. And I was just thinking about how that's also kind of made me feel like I don't belong, because that is quite rare. There's probably not a podcast on earth that has had both Michelle Obama and Jordan Peterson.
Close would be somebody like Chris Williamson. I mean, and Joe Rogan has too. I mean, Joe Rogan has interviewed Trump and Bernie Sanders. Not Kamala. That fell through, but he was going to. I mean, Chris Williamson has interviewed Bernie Sanders and plenty of people on the right as well. So it happens. But ultimately what happens is, when you do that, a lot of people aren't going to like you, and they're going to call you out or criticize you for even platforming that person. Those things absolutely happen. But I like it. I like talking to all the perspectives and the sides, because I think the one difference in me is I'll hear perspectives from other sides and I just don't become furious when I hear them. Like there's some people that they hear something they disagree with and they lose their minds. But that's just really never been me. That doesn't really happen to me. So I listen to everybody.
No.
Yeah. And then Kamala Harris after that. Like, I didn't manage to scare Michelle off. I didn't scare Jordan off. And so you kind of get attacked from both sides.
Oh, I mean, look, if you're not getting threatening shit from the far left or the far right, if you're not getting both, you're not doing your job.
Amen. Yeah.
Period.
But it's tough. Because,
oh God, it is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It will break your heart, and it will remind you of why standing alone is on the front of that book. Because what it will do is winnow the right word. It will narrow your belonging, your true belonging, down to a very few people.
I mean, I completely understand how it happens that a podcaster like me will end up picking a side, because there is safety in numbers.
Well, because there's an ideological bunker, because we flipped the table over.
100%. At any point, when the left attacks you, I'm like, wow, the right looks pretty good. When the right attacks you, you go, oh, the left looks pretty good. Because standing in no man's land is not the place you want to be. I know.
It takes a lot of courage to be in the middle, because like you said, you're going to get criticized from both sides. I think it was Margaret Thatcher that said, when you're in the middle, when you're in the middle of the road, you get run over by both sides. But then Dwight D. Eisenhower said, the middle of the road is all of the usable surface. That's where you find the compromise between the right and the left. That's where things actually get accomplished and get done. To which I agree. Dwight D. Eisenhower, underrated U.S. president, by the way. And one of my favorite quotes of his is, he says, politics should be the part-time profession of every U.S. citizen. To which I also agree. I mean, if you're going to be voting, you should probably be paying attention to what's going on and voting in a informed way. But as you know, there's probably a lot of people who are not voting in an informed way. But a lot of people fought and died for our right to vote. So it's something to not take for granted.
Oh, I'm never going to succeed in this. Like, I know I'm never going to succeed in converting people to be nuanced and to not get viscerally angry when I have someone on the show who's on the right, or viscerally angry when I have someone on the show who's on the left. I'm already aware that when the Kamala episode comes out, it's just going to be a bunch of people that didn't listen. And within the first 3 minutes, the comment section is just going to be, fuck.
Yeah.
And I'm like, part of me is trying to win that war with my audience, where they too will just listen. And I know that you don't agree with the person, but can you just listen? Because that's what I do. And it's not some act I'm putting on. It's not like I walk out there and I start, but I'm right wing in my kitchen or left wing in my kitchen. Genuinely, the way my brain works is, oh, I see this good in this individual. And then I meet someone else who's on the other side and I say, oh, there's a couple of points of good that I agree with them on this. That's how I am. And it feels so weird, because when you go on the internet, you don't find yourself being compelled by either side entirely.
No, and I think it's really confusing. And the only limit I have really is I am not probably going to have a conversation with you if your beliefs question my humanity.
Okay.
That's going to be my line. That's going to be the line for.
So what is the definition of questioning your humanity? That's the question, right? Is questioning your humanity, questioning like gendered things? I don't know. Let's see what she says.
For me is going to be if you're cruel or name cally.
Yeah.
Or if your core beliefs about who I am or who other people are dehumanizing. I can't do.
And that's another one. The definition of the humanizing here matters as well. Us here in the narcissism space, we've been accused of being dehumanizing towards narcissists. But again, that depends on your definition of dehumanizing, right? Where I don't think talking about the behaviors of a narcissist is dehumanizing. Now, like Dr. Salerno said, though, too, in the debate versus Dr. Eatonson, I don't say they're evil or demons. I do think some of the stories, literature that talks about demons and talks about people that are evil, they're probably inspired by real life psychopaths, malignant narcissists. Yeah, probably without a doubt. And there's certainly humans that do evil things. But are all narcissists evil? No, I wouldn't say that. Are there some narcissists that are doing a lot of evil things? Absolutely. And I asked the woman who was the Wolf of Wall Street's wife, Dr. Nadine, what her definition of evil was. And the definition we came up with was doing harm very intentionally. That is evil. And I would say, yeah, doing harm very intentionally without any care about the consequences and who it hurts and who it harms. And it's especially worse if you even enjoy it. So the sadistic element of it, that's even worse.
Because now I've betrayed myself in order to make a political point about nuance.
Yeah.
Because dehumanization is a really interesting and hard thing. When you look at the research of people who study dehumanization, and we talked about earlier with immigrant populations, there is a circle of moral inclusion. We are not hardwired to hurt each other, to kill each other, assault, rape, beat. We're not wired for it, actually. So in order to do that, you've got a person here inside your moral inclusion. In order to be okay with that, you've got to push them outside of moral inclusion to be morally excluded from somebody you see as human and worthy of moral inclusion. And the first step to moral exclusion, moving people out of a safety zone where you don't do horrible things to them, the first way to move people out is language throughout history, as long as people have lived. So you hear people in this administration calling a community of immigrants an infestation, the same way we would talk about animals or rats, and so my only limit to hard conversation is if you're operating from an ideology where women are dogs, immigrants are illegals, if you're operating from that place of moral exclusion.
And that's a tough one there to me, because there is such a thing as illegal immigration, but does that mean they're dehumanized? No, I don't think you should dehumanize them, but there is rules in a country. Any country needs to have some borders and rules on who can enter. Like, that's a thing too. And then how do you deal with the people that are toxic? How do you deal with the people that are abusive? How do you deal with them in a non-dehumanizing way? Would Brene Brown think going no contact with abusive people, is that dehumanizing? I don't know. I don't know what she would say about that. Is talking about the behaviors of narcissism dehumanizing? I don't know what she would say about that. So I think part of it, I agree with part of what she's saying, but I also think it's a little more complicated than what she's saying too.
You are too dangerous for me. But other than that, I'd probably be willing to have a conversation with anyone. But I can understand why people pick sides. I tell you what, it is lonely.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. It's nice to hear, though. It's really nice to hear that is, yeah. We've talked about it quite a lot, me and Jack, who's been producing this show since the very beginning. We've talked a lot about how we understand the temptation to pick a side. And actually, one of the greatest compliments a journalist has ever given me is they wrote in the article, and this wasn't a journalist that liked me, they just said, we're unable to ascertain which political party he is part of. I thought that was a great compliment, because it means that
that's a journalistic ethos.
I think they would want to pin me down and say they'd love to say I'm right wing or something else. But they said, in a not very nice piece they'd written about me, whatever, they said we're unable to figure out what side he's part of. And I think that's a compliment because it's true. And I think it allows me to do my job better, that I don't have too many preconceptions when I meet people. I try and meet people for the first time.
I think the article he's referring to is there's been a lot of pushback on some of the people that he has platformed, in particular around vaccines, I think. And I don't know what the person said, but there's a lot of people that were up in arms about it. Oh, Stephen's promoting junk science or pseudoscience. It's like, get a grip. Let people make decisions for themselves, how they want to handle their health. That's what I say. I've got a libertarian mindset on that.
Which I enjoy.
I think you're pretty good at that because you are insatiably curious. It's lovely and terrible.
Why terrible? It's terrible for an avoidant. I found this out recently. I've known it my whole life, but I found it out recently because I had a conversation. If someone's uncomfortable with vulnerability, then I'm like their fucking worst nightmare.
You are. Which is interesting because I don't expect you as super vulnerable.
Really? Maybe not.
Carefully optimistic vulnerable.
Yeah, that's probably
like you're cognitively a believer.
Yeah.
And trying to move the rest of you to it. You've got the journalistic ethos of equal opportunity, insatiable, curious guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think the responsibility is of someone who has a platform to vet or understand the credibility, especially when it comes to science or those kind of things, of what their guest is saying?
It's almost like she read my mind and what I was going to ask, or she knew I was talking about it. But I think the podcaster or someone like mine's responsibility is to try to make sure someone is who they say they are. That would disqualify someone like Sadia Khan. If you're going to lie about your credentials, and that was easier to see. She was calling herself a psychologist, and she simply wasn't. So anyone that platformed her was enabling her nonsense to continue. Now, that's not the only example. There's other examples of responsible platforming. I think if you're a big podcast and you're going to have politicians on, you should probably do your due diligence and understand a little bit about what's going on instead of just letting it be a platform for them to spew their talking points. Probably good, especially if you have a really big podcast. I'm not against them going on those podcasts, but it's probably good to have a little bit of understanding. I think that's part of being a responsible host. And and sometimes it's questioning to figure out, okay, why does this person believe what they believe? If it's one of those vaccine or anti-vaccine people, well, talk to them. See why they say what they say. See what the answers are you get. And then you have someone who's maybe pro-vaccine on to see what they say. And you compare and contrast the notes. That's what I would say to do.
I think that the school of podcasters haven't really, we don't have the training that journalists do. So we're almost catching up in that regard, especially if you become a big podcaster, because you're kind of held in a different level. So more recently, one of the things we do is we've hired, this recently, it was a year and a half ago, we hired a PhD who does exactly that, who after this comes out, will go through everything that you said and then put on the screen things that were not within scientific consensus.
But that in itself is a decision.
Yeah. Yeah. It is a decision.
It's not a choice without consequence either.
No, some people don't like it.
Well, and the thing with science also is science is evolving. Science is not set in stone, but there's some people who like to act like it is set in stone, and you shouldn't even question, you shouldn't even do anything. Set in stone, the end. And that's not really how science is supposed to work. Dr. Simon and I, we talked about this, right? But people get upset when you question things. They get upset when you just don't go along with it. And unfortunately, this is also true. As long as there's money in science, there's potential for manipulation. There's potential for corruption. There just is. And science, to an extent, can often follow the money. And you would be naive to at least not be aware of that. Now, does that mean all science is wrong? Of course not. But you also have to pay attention to where the money is influencing it, because that's a thing too. Where do you see this more than anywhere? Big pharma. Big pharma, and by extension, psychiatrists, and how they overprescribe all sorts of things. And there's a medication cure for everything. I mean, that being said, I think there are cases where medicines such as SSRIs, antipsychotics, mood stabilizers, SNRIs, they have their place. I think sometimes people need them and they can be helped. I prefer to have someone go on supplementation and do sleep, diet, exercise, take some supplements, get healthy. If that's what you need, I think that's great. And you work on that first. If that doesn't work, yeah, prescription meds, okay. There's a place for that. But they get overprescribed. Why do they get overprescribed? Because those doctors get kickbacks from prescribing those meds. Like the big pharma companies that come in there and they give presentations. And a lot of times the girls that are giving these presentations are little hot women, and they basically bat their eyes at the doctors and psychiatrists and like, oh yes, sign us up. Give us a boatload of this script. And then the woman makes a good shekel. And the doctor's like, well, got to hand out some of this stuff now. And that's just an example, right? I'm making a little more black and white, but that is exactly what's going on to an extent. But again, I don't care what helps people as long as it helps them. But this is also an example of money influencing things for sure. And lobbyists, that's what they do. Lobbyists, they influence things. Donors, they influence things. That plays a part. And you better believe there's lobbyists in all sorts of causes, science related as well.
What led you to that choice?
When your podcast reaches lots of people, you're forced, it's kind of goes to what I said earlier about the political stuff. You're forced to really get clear on what you believe and like what matters to you. And one of the things that matters to me is that the stuff we put into the world, we feel like it's helping people, even if it's not nice. And it kind of goes to something that I read in your work, which is like our objective isn't to be nice, it's to be kind.
Oh, yeah.
And so, for example, the conversations we have about AI, like I'm well aware that that's not going to necessarily make you feel great. But I think the avoidance of discomfort in through history,
oh God,
hasn't led to great places. So like if you think there's a bus coming, I can pretend there isn't. But if I think that there might be a bus coming, and if experts are telling me there's a bus coming, I think we should have a conversation about the bus coming. And actually me having that conversation, I get messages all the time, which is like, please stop talking about this subject. It doesn't make me feel good. I'm very anchored to like what my job is here. And I think we can push people further towards, we can create progress through honest conversations. So,
and this episode here is much more philosophical in nature. It's not meat and potatoes like when I'm breaking down Dr. K or Dr. Romney. Let me know if you like this kind of breakdown as well. It's a little different than the normal, but I'm trying to experiment here to see if there's other kinds of topics and things that you all find interesting. And we'll see with the views and how these videos perform. But there's also other topics to be talking about as well, whether it's the dating world, sometimes current events. But I wanted to try something a little bit different with this, just to see what the result would be.
So when the podcast got bigger and you get more and more, you get attacked more for any of your guests that you have on, you have to get clear on what matters to you and what your job is. And so one of the things I thought is actually when we have these conversations, I want them to be as accurate as they possibly can be for the listener who might be confused, because it's a confusing world in this new world of democratized media. So we do that.
I really respect that. I just want to say, I don't think that choice is the easy choice.
What is the easy choice, do you think?
The easy choice is I'm going to let you say whatever you want, and I'll let my listeners sort out if it's real or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll take no responsibility for the credibility or the facts that are being presented. What I think is interesting about what you're doing is it just seems like a very solid approach where I'm a big believer in science. I'm married to a physician. I'm a social scientist. Like I'm not going to be the golden child of this administration when it comes to science, for sure. Like I have a I love science shirt that I wear with a DNA scarf. So like I'm very real about that. I also don't think that everything that we see that is projected as peer-reviewed clinical trial, I think challenges to that system are also important. I think science cannot be a self-referencing system any more than any other system can be. So to have people that have different opinions or new opinions but to let your listeners or your viewers know that this is not an opinion where there's a lot of data collected or that this is a controversial opinion is respecting people's cognitive self-determination. I just think it's an interesting way to do it. I think I launched the podcast and it became very big during COVID.
Oh God. Yeah.
And so Houston is home to the biggest medical center in the world, And I live in the medical center area. In the beginning, there were there never stopped being funerals for physicians and people working on COVID. And so to hear on podcasts that it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Or that you can use, Windex or, like some bullshit like that. I just started to, and then I got into a little dust up around it in my own situation. And so I'm always interested as we enter this world in platform and podcast responsibility.
It's a slippery slope and it's,
very.
And
back to what you were saying, peer reviewed, all peer reviewed really means is the methods in the study were sound. It is not an endorsement of findings. That is something that people make the mistake all of the time. They'll talk about evidence-based, peer-reviewed. And it's like, well, depending on the subject matter, that's really just saying that they did the study soundly. In the social sciences in particular, it's going to be really difficult for there to be cut and dry things. There's becoming more with the neuroimaging, etc. But for the very most part, it isn't cut and dry yet. And that you can't understate that.
There's no perfect outcome. Like you don't want to go too far either way, right?
No.
You don't want to the government get involved and tell you what truth is, or
right.
But you also don't want to stray into conspiracy land and away from science because,
there are things that are knowable.
Yeah, there are things that are knowable.
But I don't know. I just think it's an interesting question for this time. And I think it's an interesting question when you have a platform that's powerful. And I think if you're doing the best you can to make decisions based, what is the question that drives your decision making?
For me?
No, like just in general.
Generally.
I got yours.
Yeah,
you want to help your listeners and you want to do good.
Yeah.
That's a different thing than downloads.
You can do both.
You can do both.
Yeah.
But if your only filter.
Well, you'd go for fucking total conspiracy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I just think it's an interesting question. I don't have an answer. I just know that it's an important question.
Yeah. And you know what? I'll be honest. So as, we're not journalists here, so we don't really understand the rigor. And I've got a lot of respect for journalists and the effort they've put in to understand the journalistic method and all those things. I feel like we're somewhat catching up. This podcast went from 0 to 70 million people a month in 4.5 years or something. So, and we're just again holding on. Like me and Jack didn't run a podcast before, so I didn't run one before, and so we're now catching up. And part of the way that we're shaped is with feedback, and you get lots of feedback. Don't have this person. I'll never speak to this person again. And you kind of bat that stuff off. But if there's anything that actually feedback that actually is in contradiction, that does test your own mission or your own values, then you listen and you you can start to innovate. And one of the things that we thought was smart was to have the pop-ups on screen, which everybody is probably familiar with by now. And it's a balancing act. We don't want to completely discredit everything that the guest has to say, but we also just want to give context. And that's kind of context to what they're saying. If something's ridiculous, we'll just remove it. Like if something's absolutely, or we'll not publish the episode is probably a better way of saying it. We had a couple of episodes where some guests said some things which were just absolutely fucking crazy. You don't need a PhD to know that you can't exercise by lying on the ground. Like this one guest had said to me that you can build your muscles just by laying on your back or whatever and not doing anything. We just didn't publish the episode.
I can just say as a PhD that I have attempted that.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
And it was for jack shit.
I think Jack made that point.
I can be your PhD on the just laying still. Yeah. No, I think that I respect the approach, and which is one of the reasons I decided to come on, because I respect the approach.
We're not perfect, but we're trying. And it's tough,
That's the thing, that you're walking a path.
The world of business looks entirely different today than it.
Well, that might be a good place to pause that one for now, because that's about halfway through. There's another 50 minutes of that. And they talk about vulnerability. They talk about the importance of vulnerability, managing fear of vulnerability, overcoming negative, traditions, improving self-esteem, leaders' misconceptions, ads, losing your mother to dementia, all of these things. Rhodes, welcome. We did more of a philosophical discussion, breaking down Brene Brown and Stephen from the Diary of a CEO. Interesting, right? It wasn't as snappy as the Dr. K and Dr. Romney breakdowns because they're talking more about narcissism. But I'm hunting. I'm hunting for things to kind of go over, things that will be interesting. And we'll see. We'll see how they do. I saw Dr. Orion Taraban. He was interviewed by Brad Carr the other day. I did wind up listening to the entire thing. Honestly, there wasn't much to break down in there. There's a couple things that might be worth going over, but it just wasn't as much that stood out to me with that. There was some more philosophical stuff towards the end, though. One of the things they were mentioning was there's people that jump off the bridge to try to end their own life. And there's this one place in California, people do that. And 1 out of 50 people about survives the fall. And when they interview those people, they almost all say the second that they clear the rail, they regretted it. And they said to themselves, what the hell am I doing? So that's an interesting thing to think about there. Now, maybe it's no coincidence that they survived once they think that, perhaps. Maybe the people that wanted to die, they make sure they do. Right? So maybe there's a biased sample there. But I think the Buddhists say, it's not you that wants to die. There's a part of you that wants to die. And I think that's accurate. I think it's not really you. There's a part of you that wants to. But that's something they talked about in the latter half of their discussion. They talked a little bit about manipulation in the dating market. And there you know, it was kind of interesting. Hiya, Matilda. Did I ever tell you that my eldest daughter's name, I call her Tilly? Nope. We never heard that. Yeah, I thought so too, LG. It was interesting. It was interesting. Because Dr. Orion Taraban, I don't disagree with everything he says. I think something about him personally, I'm a little bit skeptical of. I think there's like a different version of him you would see when the camera's off. And that's something that to take note of. But as far as strictly his content goes, there's some interesting things he talks about. He triggers some people, but like a lot of the stuff is fine. A lot of the stuff is fine. Tilly is cute, I would say. Tracy, Molly, Jolly, Tracy, Jolly, TJ, JT, Justin Timberlake, toupee, like a hair toupee? That is insane. But what else do we have coming up here? Like I said, Dr. Carey's next Monday. Josh is next Thursday. This other guy, he talks about all sorts of controversial things, from vaccines to he thinks a lot of very successful people are miserable. We'll talk about that too, like Alex Hormozzi's and the capitalist porn people. And Marcella might be this Friday, so we'll have to see about that too. Like Toppy, Jared. That's hilarious. Not Toupee, Toppy. But all right, everybody. That's really it for now. I'll probably be back again tomorrow night. I'm not sure if I'll break down a video tomorrow night or if I'll just come up with a topic. Or maybe I'll even record a video. I'm not sure. And there might come a time when I start doing more recorded videos than shorts. We'll see. Because it'll be better financially for me. But we'll see how that goes, right? Because when I do the shorts now, I post them on all of the platforms. I post them to Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Longer form videos can really only go on YouTube or TikTok for the very most part. Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I like having a good personality people like. Toppy. Jolly's nickname is Toppy. It can remind you. It can rhyme. That's part of it. But you got it, Ellie. But Ellie, Jolly, not to be confused with Toppy. LG. I think I pronounce her name. Keisha. Rhodes, George, everyone else that was here. It's always a pleasure to have you on board. And until next time. Yeah, I am the opposite of Maximus from Gladiator. I do entertain. But with that, over and out, everybody.